This week on the show, we're going to be talking to Joss about the OpenSense project, a new firewall project that was forked from pfSense recently. We'll also learn some of the backstory and see what they've got planned for the future. We've also got all of this week's news and answers, of course, to all your email here on BSD Now, so stay tuned. It's the place to be, SD. BSD Now, episode 72, The Common Sense Approach, recorded January 14th, 2015. Hey, I'm your host, Chris Moore.
And I'm Alan Jude.
We're glad to have you guys with us this week. We got an exciting show coming straight at you. We're going to be talking a lot about routers and security and all kinds of fun stuff. So, of course, keep it tuned right here. But we're going to get right into your headlines here first. And first up this week, we have an article about Be Your Own VPN Provider with OpenBSD. This is a really, really cool article, actually, especially if you use an open VPN. Do you trust the remote end? Well, what if you can be your own remote end? So how do they go about doing this?
This one's just talking about how to use OpenBSD to basically be your own VPN. So you get an OpenBSD server set up somewhere, right? Depends what your purpose of having a VPN is. If it's for dealing with stuff while you're at home and controlling where that goes out, that's one thing. Then you're going to need some offsite, and they talk about using a dedicated virtual private server or a physical server or whatever. But also, you know, my main need for a VPN is usually when I'm on the road somewhere, and I would just like to be able to connect back to my house and use my connection at home and just make sure that, you know, everything is. I'm sure that the hotel isn't interfering with my connection or whatever, right?
Or, not at all, right? I'm sure they update all their
OpenBSD people around. I wouldn't want them to be reading my email.
Oh, let's be honest. For most of us, it's just so we can watch Netflix here in the States, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so, but they go through all the instructions, what you need. They talk about a couple of the providers that can provide OpenBSD-based virtual machines. And then they talk about what you need. First of all, which is protecting your naked server, right? Obviously, if you're going to have a server out somewhere that's going to be bouncing all your traffic off of it, you need to protect it first. So they talk about setting up the firewall and the SSH keys and locking down your SSHD and all that fun stuff. Then they actually get into setting up the network and dealing with setting up the IP forwarding and the NAT and making that work. Setting up the DNS, it's going to use DNS crypt so that even someone who's sitting doing man in the middle, obviously they can't read the traffic over the VPN, but even if they're sitting on the connection as it leaves your OpenBSD server, the DNS requests are going to go out to OpenDNS encrypted such that they still wouldn't be able to tell what website you're going to or which DNS names you're resolving and so on. Yep.
Oh, that's cool.
And that just further messes with any kind of deep packet inspection they're trying to do. Then it talks about the firewall, you know, protecting from SYN floods and stuff and doing the actual natting for your VPN. And they have lots of good example firewall rules in there. And then
I really like the fact they got a good client section too, including on a mobile client, how you can set up like OpenVPN on Android.
Which is very useful, again, especially when you're in a foreign country where you don't know what's going on or what the hotel Wi-Fi is actually trying to do to your phone. On TechSnap, we covered this one group of hackers that would basically take over the Wi-Fi at a hotel and set it up so that the captive portal would present like a flash update or something that would convince people to install it, and then they would be stealing all the business documents off everybody's laptop in the hotel.
Wow. Man, you can't trust anything these days, can you?
Just get that VPN and make sure that your phone isn't getting affected on top of your laptop and so on. And yeah, they set up an OpenVPN server, and they also discuss how to set up the clients for all your different OSs, because it doesn't matter what OS you use, you're going to want to protect it with your VPN.
Definitely.
And
that's really cool.
You know, how this is obviously more secure than some other VPN service because you have complete control over it. You don't have to trust someone else isn't messing with it. And you can make sure
Yeah.
that, the OpenSSH or OpenSSL gets updated and as quickly as you want.
In a timely fashion. That's right.
And so,
Well, he has a good section on the security and anonymity as well, how you can hide your privacy online so people can't tell who you are. He talks a little bit about using Tor browser, obviously, DuckDuckGo for a search engine. And he has this neat link to a site on the EFF.org, which will show your browser fingerprint uniqueness. So that's pretty cool as well. So you check and see if people can't identify you that way. But yeah, really cool article. You definitely should set that up if you're concerned about your security or privacy or travel a lot and don't necessarily trust all the public Wi-Fi you're connecting to. Okay, anything else you want to mention on that one, Alan?
It's a very comprehensive guide, and it looks very nice.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. Okay, next up, we got a cool article about FreeBSD versus Gentoo, a good comparison. And let's see, which site is this from? I Will Follow site, and I love at the end, are you red or purple? But people coming from Linux will sometimes compare FreeBSD to Gentoo, though, mostly because of the portage system for installing software. So that's kind of where the comparison starts. So this article is pretty cool because it kind of takes that idea, then goes much more in depth, like what are the real differences, and compares the two, like from a real world usage perspective.
Because at the same time, Gentoo's all command line, everything. It's FreeBSD is not quite that difficult.
No, not at all. And the author mentions, of course, everything. He even starts at the installer, which is really cool. The installer is, of course, very different. Ports and portage have many subtle differences, of course. And he mentions a few other things involved with the system administration setup. But if you're a curious Gentoo user considering FreeBSD, this is actually a really cool article. So it'll give you kind of a quick how-to, some of the things that are different that might bite you when you first set it up. But yeah, definitely a neat read.
Yeah. I see they have a screenshot of Lumina at the bottom there.
Yeah, well, that's for another article. It looks like a related post. But yeah, that came out this week as well. New Qt5-based version, which is awesome.
But yeah, they talk a bit about package NG and how, now you don't have to compile everything from ports. And they
One thing I was surprised he mentioned about the Gentoo had a much smaller number of packages that were already precompiled, only about 17,000, I guess. But although their portage has a lot more available in it, 37,000 plus. Let's see. So the FreeBSD precompiled package, 23,000 and change.
Yeah, which is almost everything except for the ones that are marked like restricted and have license issues or whatever.
So we cheat with a few of those and roll those anyway, but you didn't hear that here. Well, there's like some games too where they don't package them because they're 800 megs, a gigabyte or whatever, and I build those anyway because some people do want to play flight sims.
I guess to say they talk about the FreeBSD ports make jobs number, and they say it doesn't seem to do anything more. It's because it's on by default, I think, right? Yeah, so that's why you're not seeing a big difference because it was already set for you.
Well, that's cool. So yeah, definitely an interesting read, and he's got nice screenshots to go along with it too. So it's a nice visual article. But yeah, take a look at that. Okay, next up, we got some OpenBSD news. It looks like some more security stuff. Now, I'm not sure how you pronounce that.
W or X.
Right. So,
yeah.
W or X? Okay. So it's a security feature in OpenBSD, which when written out has a rather strange looking name, of course. But it's really cool. It's another exploit mitigation technique, which disallows pages.
So when a block of memory, you can either write to it because it's data, or you can execute it. So if you're able to write to it, you won't be allowed to execute it, so that something hinky can't happen. Now, that's been in OpenBSD for a long time, but what they've done is they've extended it into the kernel now, which obviously takes a lot more work because you have to do everything exactly right. Otherwise, it all breaks horribly.
Well, a lot of exploits come from buffer overflows, so this makes it work a little differently. So code injected won't execute, but it will still crash the program, which obviously you'd prefer that rather than getting exploited.
And specifically, you want some indication that something bad has happened. If it just went along its merry way, you wouldn't know that somebody was trying to break things. At least now it's emitting an obvious signal that, hey, something weird is happening to your memory here.
This is crash, something bad. You should investigate this and then figure out where the crash came from. So, of course, doing this in the kernel is a little bit tricky because it could lead to pretty far worse consequences should something go wrong. and was a lot harder to debug. So this is a pretty big accomplishment that's been in the works for a while. So congratulations, guys. That's awesome that you've put that in. And we have links in the show notes here to some more of the gory technical details in the CVS commits. So if you'd like to take a look how it does this, you are welcome to follow up with that.
Yes. And they mentioned that AMD 64 and Spark 64. Now, the improvements are for all architectures, but those two in particular have extra advantages because they have the MMU that allows the hardware to control who has access to what memory and so on.
Nice. Oh, so just AMD 6, that includes the Intel chips too, right? Or just the AMD?
AMD 64, the platform. So all 64-bit.
The platform, okay.
x86.
I was going to say, like, that's not cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. Well, next up, we have, to finish up the week, we have another neat article over at the PCBSD blog, which actually I wrote. So I'm just going to kind of tell you guys a little bit about it. But over the Christmas break, I had a couple weekends where I had some free time, which is very rare around here since we have several kids and the house gets busy around Christmas. But one of those weekends, I was able to take an old system. I had an old dual-core AMD X2 box, like 7 or 8 years old, just kind of laying around, hadn't been used in a while.
I have one in the basement
and
too.
I turned that. Yeah, right. And what are you going to do with an old system like that? So I turned it into a router and put a FreeBSD on it, or TrueOS, which is PCBSD's server version of FreeBSD. But the blog article is going to basically talk about how I did that, why I chose to do it on TrueOS versus just vanilla FreeBSD. And I'll give you a hint, it has to do with ZFS. But no, really, I use ZFS for everything nowadays. And even on my router, I have 2 hard drives, and I wanted to be able to do mirroring and be able to do boot environments. So when I do an update, if something goes wrong, I can just reboot back into the old one. Like
I did the same thing on my router because my router is running like FreeBSD dev, like the current branch. And so there's a very good chance at some point something horrible is going to happen. And I want to go back.
And your router is the kind of thing where people get cranky the longer it's offline. Like if my router goes down and my kids can't connect and my wife can't connect and I can't connect to the net, like, people are going to get hurt around here. Like that's not good.
On each other, and then your wife's getting upset. And you're getting all of the aggro.
So, using ZFS boot environments, definitely the way to go. I actually just used 2 old 80 gig hard drives I had laying around, and they're old and slow. They're IDE even. But I don't really care about disk speed. I just care about reliability and uptime. And when they fail, I'll put another one in.
Using ZFS, so you're going to get most of the speeds anyway.
Yeah, it's fine. But it's really cool. So that should an update go awry in the future or something happen, it's as simple as let me just go reboot the computer, pick the old boot environment, done, and then I can investigate it when I have time and it's more convenient to take the network down at some point. But anyway, the article goes over one of the other things I did a little different is I used IPFW instead of PF, which we've covered building PF routers before. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about PF today, so that's cool. But IPFW has been in FreeBSD for a long time. It's still getting a lot of work, forever.
There was some work done a couple years ago where they rewrote it from scratch, and it has really good scalability for multiple processors. Now, in the example of your machine, you only have the 2, so it's not as big a deal.
Yeah,
but if you're forwarding huge amounts of traffic and you have like a 24-core processor, then or 2 12-core processors or whatever, it'll scale a lot better and be able to use that CPU power more effectively.
Definitely. So yeah, my experience I've found, so our upstream's 100 or 10 meg up, 100 down, right? And even when we got a whole bunch of Netflix going on and stuff, I'm using like less than 1% of CPU on that box. So IPFW barely chugging at all. But anyway, the article talks about how we set that up. We even go over a little bit of how you can do port forwarding, to services behind NAT. And then also I updated it a couple days ago with some new stuff where I switched from NATD, which was the older FreeBSD NAT daemon, which lives
the
in
other week.
SLAM.
We talked about divert sockets for PF, and IPFW uses a similar thing called divert sockets, and it sends it to NATD and userland, which allows you to make configuration changes and restart it whenever you need or whatever. But for speed, there's an in-kernel implementation of that with libalias, and you switched to that, and you said you saw like...
I switched... Well, I saw it save about 2% CPU time, so it definitely got quicker. But the cool thing was there wasn't a lot of docs out there on how to do this, very few. So just kind of reading through some various blog posts and, of course, the band pages, I was able to switch it to NAT, and then I documented that for you guys. So if that's something you want to do and have a spare weekend, there you go. I hope it helps you. But, of course, it covers setting up DHCP server, some packages, and it touches even a little bit on NAT reflection, which was a big deal for me. I run a couple services, and that took me a while to figure out how to do and like kind of research like because there's like four different names people call
Yeah.
it, and like what do you Google and whatnot. But it does do NAT reflection. So, and for those who don't know, the uninitiated, which I was a couple weeks ago, NAT reflection is, say you're running a service like for a website and you have some URL which is available outside your network. Obviously, you're hosting it in the network. But when you're on your local LAN, you want to just type in that URL and go to that same address. Well, you got to do something different where your firewall will redirect the traffic to the local machine, even though it's on the same domain name. I have a good link to OpenBSD's FAQ on how you can do that. There's 4 different techniques you can do for doing proper NAT reflection. And the one I picked, I guess, was TCP proxying in this case, because that's all I needed. And it was very, path of least resistance.
Well,
anyway.
yeah, because I guess the interesting thing there is, so you have your NAT router, and then on the outside of it, you have your one public IP address, and then everything inside has internal addresses. And so it's kind of actually weird to want to go out to the internet and connect back into yourself, and you have to teach the router how to deal with that.
Well, see, most home routers, I mean, for a long time would just do this, right?
Well,
and they don't really advertise.
Ago, they didn't, and then eventually they got the feature, and now everybody depends on it.
Everyone depends on it, right? But then trying to figure out how to do that by hand with firewall rules is a little bit more tricky. So anyway, I did post some information about that. So if you're an IPFW fan or love FreeBSD, or you're running an old router, interestingly enough, I did this, 3-4 weeks ago? It was when I put this new router in. And then TJ, our producer, posted something in our chat a couple days ago about a new ASUS exploit for ASUS consumer routers that lets you do remote exploit and run commands, upload your own firmware,
you could send commands to it over UDP, and it would just execute them. And it's like, what?
Right? Yeah, it's a bad one. And anyway, so it was convenient timing because I happened to be running an ASUS router originally. So that one is gone by.
That one's now in the bin where it belongs.
Right? Well, I've repurposed it as an access point only now. But it's not doing anything critical anymore. But yeah, so definitely take a look at the link here. We'll have that in the show notes if you're curious to see how you would do that with IPFW. And I encourage you, even if you don't use FreeBSD or IPFW, use some sort of BSD.
With these different articles, we now have instructions on how to do it in like 4 different ways. Just pick one and replace that off-the-shelf router you have before your model is the next one on the list for the one that's causing problems.
Well, me and Alan before the show were talking too, like I guess some of the denial of service stuff over the holidays on like Xbox and PlayStation. One of the things Lizard Squad had said, or we had heard anyway, was that they were using routers. And we were talking, I mean, think about it. In your home, most people, put their router in, they never touch it again. 99% of people don't touch them. So, that's definitely a huge security
And how often
risk.
do people be like, oh, the internet's not working, reboot the router, oh, it works again? That was the biggest advantage for me. As soon as I went away using BSD as the router, all of a sudden I stopped having trouble all the time.
That's right. So anyway, take a look at that. Hope you guys will find that article interesting. And of course, we're going to be talking a little bit more about firewalls today. So stay tuned for that. But of course, before we do our interview this week, we do want to mention our sponsor for the episode, which is IX Systems. And the URL for that, ixsystems.com/BSD now. Do let them know that we sent you. We'd appreciate that. So, Alan, have you bought anything new from them recently?
I didn't, but somebody else did and had them ship it directly to me to then put in our co-location, which worked out. And the other one I had was I had a drive fail in a machine I bought from them a couple years ago, a year and some ago. And so I went through their warranty process for the first time. And wow, that was easy. It just so happens that I had a a machine at my house fail around the same time, and I dealt directly with the drive manufacturer for that one. And the difference between the two was pretty amazing. With IX, I filed a ticket, posted the smart data. They're like, okay, yes, that one's dead. And, on their form, when you're filling out how you want to deal with it, they understand the fact that I don't actually need the drive shipped to me. You need to ship it to the data center where the server is, and it needs all these extra markings so the data center knows what to do with it and how to relate that. And yes, we're a company, so we have an internal ticket number that we'd like to reference in your ticket so that we can cross-reference the situations. Especially if we had enough servers where it might be 2 that were having trouble at the same time, we could keep track of which ticket from IX. And anyway, they shipped the drive very quickly. The replacement drive arrived and included a prepaid shipping label to ship the old one back to them, and it was all flawless and great.
So pretty much like white glove
Exactly.
service from beginning to end.
Yeah.
Is what
Whereas
you're
the
saying.
drive
That's
manufacturer was
really cool.
like, you have to pack it exactly to our specifications. So I hope you have a box. Luckily, I bought some drives, so I had the right kind of packaging already. And then you ship it back, and it's like, well, you can ship it back to us, and then we'll get it, and then we'll look at it, and we'll decide, and then we'll ship you a replacement drive. Or if you give us a credit card that we can hold on to in case you don't ship it, we'll ship you the new one, and then you can ship us the old one back after. Or you can pay,
Sure.
and we'll ship it to you faster. But, it took a couple of weeks to get the replacement versus IX has all sorted. And then once they noticed that I had received the drive, or the data center had received the drive, and they're like, okay, so did you get it installed yet? Did you have any trouble? Do you need help getting your ZFS pool back online with the replaced drive? And, definitely a really
That's
nice
awesome.
experience.
So if they take that good of care of you after you've already bought a system and you're already a customer, man, like that's just awesome. Some places, forget about you. Oh, we've already sold you something.
It's
You're
like
on your own now.
you're not wanting to buy something else. You're wanting us to replace a broken component. Why do we want to help you?
Yeah, but if they treat you this well, again, after you've already bought something, just dealing with the support problem, then imagine what it'd be like getting set up originally with them to purchase that new server,
And
that new free
as
NAS
soon
box.
as I bought the biggest machine I'd ever bought, and I was like, well, I don't know how to do multipath, and they worked with me to get it working. It was like, well, that feels really good. But getting
is
that
awesome.
same level of treatment even a year after buying the machine was really nice.
Cool. So again, guys, ixsystems.com/BSD now. Go there, let them know we sent you, and get in touch with those guys. They will hook you up with the new solution you guys need for 2015. And stay tuned. We're going to be talking about some firewalls here in
If
just
you
a
need
moment.
a firewall, you should talk to them. They have those new Intel Atom CPUs that are really low power.
Oh, yeah.
And a little short depth thing and be great for a firewall.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, maybe the next one I build, that's what it'll be. That'd be cool. And we're joined now by Josh Shelavis, which I'm sure I just butchered your last name, so I apologize for that. But he's on the core team for OpenSense router project, and we're glad to have you with us this week, Josh. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for being here. It's very nice to be on the show this
thank
time.
So I guess the first question we always ask people is, how did you originally get involved in BSD?
Well, I'm not really that much into BSD. It's just when I started with our small company, we used Monowall very much, and we liked the product. It's very stable, and that's how we got in touch with BSD.
Okay.
Later on, also FreeNAS, maybe a small PBX company that you might know that used BSD in the past is Ascosia, which is a German company, also open source. And later on, we used pfSense very much. So I'm more of a user in that terms and help people getting around with firewalls and security and communication stuff, and done mostly on BSD.
Cool.
Okay. So what's some of the backstory of OpenSense? How did it get started, and why did it get started?
OpenSense was used as a product name for our pfSense-based products. And we were developing a new line of products based on Linux, but we found out that BSD has more to offer. Certainly, when you look at features that are already available, and obviously we had the good experience with the stability of the system. And the idea about OpenSense is that it's open makes sense. That's the idea that we had for the name, and we wanted to have a project that's both on three fronts. It's different. It should be technologically better. It should be defined. Most of the open source projects that you see do not have a good technical background, and you need structure in your project. And that's one of the things that we found very important to focus on. And the other thing is that you need a good community. You need a community to work together, to share things, and make the project better. If you do it on your own, it's always difficult to on the long run get the project moving. So that's the second thing. And to do that, we think it should be transparent, open makes sense. So that's the introduction on OpenSense that I can give you at the moment.
Very cool.
Okay.
So yes, so what are some of the things about OpenSense that make people want to use it over something else?
Well, I think it's very easy to use. It has a lot of features, and it is a very intuitive user interface with Bootstrap, to the Bootstrap based, um, and pretty much everything that you need you're gonna find in there. At the moment, we lack two features which are asked very much. That's the proxy server and IDS or IPS intrusion prevention, and those two things are going to be in 15.7. So that's in July.
Nice.
So,
Okay. So you looks like you guys got a version out based on FreeBSD 10 already. Do you plan on having a rapid release cycle, and how are security patches and backporting going to be handled?
yeah, we're absolutely going to try to get a more rapid release cycle. We want to release more closely to the FreeBSD system. For that, we still have some issues with the patches that we inherited from pfSense. So we are trying to do that a little bit different. For Captive Portal, we already rewritten everything, so we do not need our patches anymore, and we're going to do that for other things as well.
Okay.
Yeah, but since we still have some of those patches in there, it's difficult to move to 10.1 at the moment. So it takes a little bit more time to do that. But as of 15.7, we will certainly be more closely related to the FreeBSD project.
So you guys backporting like the security patches and stuff too?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yes,
And
for the security patches, it should be not too much trouble to do that.
nice. How about the updating? So will you be able to update via in the product to new versions?
Yes, we have already in the product is an upgrade system that's based on the package system of FreeBSD.
Okay.
So it's really easy to upgrade. And we're going to add security patches as well to that, so that you can just the new audit method that's in there, that you can do PKG audit -f. You get to see which packages are security related that you need to upgrade. We're going to use that as well into the system and make sure that you can upgrade only the security features that you need to upgrade.
Yep.
So they
Nice.
can be mandatory if you like.
How long
Okay.
will the 15.1 release be supported after 15.7 comes out?
Well, at the moment, we like every user to upgrade as soon as possible, because we have many small bugs still to fix. We're working on that very hard to make sure that it's the best usable thing that we can offer to customers at the moment. But it's a new project, so long-term support is something that we are going to think of after 15.7. At the moment, it's releasing with a rapid release cycle.
And so how do you plan to deal with the fact that you're based on FreeBSD 10.0, but the end of life for that is this February, but your next version doesn't come out until July?
Well, we're going to backport the things that are required for security fixes. Other than that, we are going to concentrate on 15.7, where we will be on the latest release.
Okay. Cool. So I think our producer was behind this question here, but being a PF-based solution, especially with a name like OpenSense, why not start with OpenBSD as the base? Thank you, TJ.
Yeah. Well, it's a logical question, I guess. Well, it's not too difficult to do that now. When we started, we migrated and forked from pfSense, so it's difficult to do that with pfSense. With our core, it's more easy to do that because we are more aligned to the FreeBSD project. Also, the tool set is easier to use. And I think if anyone wants to do that, they can. Well, everything is in there to do that. The only things that you might run into are the current patches that's still in there that are probably going to be a little bit more difficult to port.
Sure.
But other than that, I think it would be fairly easy to do. We're probably not going to do it ourselves.
Yep. Do it on your own time, folks.
Yeah, I guess so. Or hire us.
All right. There you go.
So yeah, I guess a lot of people have questions about why didn't you do it this way or that way, and mostly comes down to, you're based on pfSense because it was already a working product, so that you could have a starting base. Otherwise, you would spend 2 years developing something to build something from scratch, right? Are there things you're considering making drastic changes, like moving away from PHP or anything like that?
Well, we are making drastic changes. We already did that with the tool set, which is completely different, and it's more aligned with FreeBSD, and the package system is completely different. And Captive Portal has been completely rewritten, and Captive Portal is also a nice thing in terms of how we are working. What we are doing is we are refactoring the code completely and using a framework beneath that to have clean code and structured methods to release new functionality. And obviously it's difficult to do everything at once, so we port feature by feature to the new system. And we use Falcon for that at the moment, which is PHP. But the difference is here that we use PHP for what it actually should be used for, and that's the web-based GUI itself. So all the functions that need root access and things that should be running as in a daemon or a backend system, we port them to a new framework, and we only leave in the front end the things that do not need any root access. Just reads and writes your configuration, and you can type in your user settings, but nothing else.
Cool. Okay. So if people are looking to get involved, what's the best way to do so right now? And are you looking for any particular type of involvement?
We're looking for almost any type of involvement at the moment. Okay. Documentation, help with coding, testing is a very important part, obviously.
Yeah. How are you handling the testing now?
What we do at the moment is that we have the forum, we have email, and we have GitHub, so you can leave your comments on those 3 places. That's the easiest way to do. And you can test very easily by downloading an image. You can install it on a VMware or Hyper-V or whatever you like, or on a real system if you like, and test it. And the upgrade process is also in there. So if there's a new version, you can test out if things are improved or not.
Right, but do you have any types of like automated testing and stuff going on, or is it just user feedback testing?
At the moment, it's just user feedback. Yes. Yeah, we do a little bit of performance testing and other stuff, but that's not really for the current release very important. It's for later on.
Okay.
And I guess the next question is, why are you naming your releases like Ubuntu? Like the version numbers I can live with, but having silly names, that's something.
Okay. Well, let me first explain something why we use that model, because the thing is that we find it very important to show people that there should be structure in a project, and not only in code and not only in documentation, but also in the way that you release new versions. Mm-hmm. So we think that it's important to set some sort of roadmap and to release regularly. So we will release every half year. So next release will be in July, and then the next release will be in January, and in between we will have small updates.
Right, like the version numbers. Yes, I like the system with the dates.
Yeah.
My question is about the silly names, like I forget what it is now, but it's something with the letter A.
Well, there are two nice things about naming. Naming, of course, it's easier to remember the versions by if you have a particularly good version that you love and you want to keep. Or there are things in there that you want to remind us to have them in there. It's easier than version numbers. Version numbers do not say much to clients. The ascending albatross that we have at the moment is a name at the last spot, but it's the idea is it's a large bird. It's coming from the ground. It takes a little bit of time to get to the air. But it gets everywhere around the world. It's spread. So that's nice. That's the idea. And for the next release, obviously, it depends. If everything goes as we planned, it will probably the Rocketing Robin. But if everything goes a little bit less, the Plunging Pelican would also be a name that you can use.
There you go.
So it's not. I wouldn't take it too serious. The names are just there for reference, nothing else.
Mm-hmm. So, anything else you want to tell us about the project before we go?
Well, I think the most important thing about our project is that we try to share things with others, and we do not want to keep talking about tools and how we are better than others. I think everybody should just choose what they like and stick to it. And if they like our project, nice. It's very good, and we hope that that people join in and help us with the coding and testing and documentation. And if not, it's fine by me if they choose anything else. But let's see what happens in 6 months if we're still here and can show the new product and what people think about
well,
it.
Yeah, the competition is good for the ecosystem, and two sets of people making changes and sharing them makes both things better. So.
I think so too. Yes, absolutely.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for being on the show with us this week, Joss.
Thank you very much for being here, and hopefully we can revisit this in July.
Well, we will definitely keep up to date with what's going on, and be sure to mention in the news when releases happen.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to head into the news roundup, but before we do, of course, we want to mention the other sponsor this week, which is TarSnap. And the URL for that, tarsnap.com/BSD now. And you have something to show us, I guess,
yeah,
Alan,
just
on the screen?
pulled up my profile page for January so far, and you can see it shows the charge of me uploading just about 500 megabytes of data, and that cost me 12 cents. And then storing that for the one day cost me 0.4 of a cent. And then the next day, because of the deduplication that happens in TarSnap, I only had about 1.3 megabytes of new data, which cost me 0.03 of a cent to upload.
Yeah,
and so on. And then the next day, I guess I didn't do any work, so I only had 3 kilobytes of data, which cost 0.000008 of a cent, and so on.
Nice.
And yeah, it's like altogether, I've managed to use like 35 cents or something so far this month.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, so definitely not super expensive if you're looking to do offsite backup. So, you guys have heard us. We've told you, dozens of times, but get your backup set up. If you're not, get them done now. Don't wait any longer. It's 2015, guys. Let's get your backups done in a way where they're secure and offsite. So if the worst comes to worst and something happens to your systems or servers, stolen, fire, flood, you name it, bad employee deletes everything. Like, you need to have a copy somewhere else so you can get that data back. Because, I mean, let's face it, your data is pretty much your life. And losing that, how many man hours and moments of your life are gone forever.
And so far, in the first 2 weeks of January, I've managed to rack up a whopping backup bill of 17.2 cents.
Nice. So, guys, go ahead and get set up with TarSnap. Clients are available for pretty much everything. So go visit tarsnap.com and download and start getting set up. And pretty soon you'll have a nice little screen here like Alan, where you can see how much or how little you're using at the moment.
And, just meet your New Year's resolution and make sure you get those backups done. I did.
Definitely. Yes, definitely. Okay, so time to hit up to the news roundup. So first up, we have an article, a blog post from Adrian Chad, who's been the FreeBSD go-to Wi-Fi guy for a long time. We've had on the show before.
Been, just general performance stuff. I remember we talked about his work with receive size scaling, making servers be able to handle huge amounts of bandwidth by spreading the incoming data over multiple, what do you call those? Processors. That's it.
Yes. Those things inside the computer and stuff. Yeah.
And so in order to do some of the testing for that, he's had to be, how do we test when you want to generate 10 gigabytes or gigabits per second of traffic, right? All the old tools like Apache Bench don't really cut the mustard when you need to do 10 gigabits per second of simulated traffic, or I need to do more than 65,000 concurrent sockets, so I'm going to need to use more than one source IP address, otherwise I'm going to run out of port numbers.
But yeah, interesting article talking about some of his woes with benchmarking, I guess, with this. And I guess some of the tools aren't quite up to snuff. He says it's not very pretty at the moment, open source tools for doing these benchmarks. So he decided to work on a new tool to benchmark huge amounts of web traffic, and the rest of his post describes the whole process, how he's doing that. So we also have a link in the article and here in the show notes you can take a look at. There's a link to his project on GitHub. So if this is something you're interested in, you guys need some benchmarking, maybe get in touch with Adrian, see if that's something you can either help with or utilize in your place of business.
And he also talks about using the transparent interception support in FreeBSD's IPFW as a cool way to allow both connections from and connections to arbitrary IP addresses, so that you could, part of the load you need to simulate might actually involve using more than one IP range, right? Instead of having all the traffic come from like 192.168 dot something. So if you want to be able to test the receive size scaling, which is hashing based on IP addresses and stuff, you might need to be able to simulate from IPs that you don't actually own or aren't technically allowed to use. And so using IPFW to allow you to do that.
That's very cool. So some other neat IPFW tricks. So yeah, definitely take a look at that, guys.
Speaking of IPFW and firewalls and diverting stuff to userland to do strange things with it.
Yep. Next up, we had an article on the Daemon forums talking about using divert to reduce attacks, which we've mentioned this in past episodes, using divert with PF and using that to, of course, divert traffic. What else? But this post here is talking about how you can use divert combined with some blacklists to reduce attacks on whatever public services you're running. So very cool. PF has a good built-in rate limiting for abusive IPs, which are hitting you pretty rapidly. But when they attack slowly over a long period of time, this isn't going to work for
which
you.
Is, if you remember, we covered Peter Hanstein's talk about the Hail Mary cloud, where they would purposely only do like one request every 15 minutes so that they never hit that rate limit. But they can still, by doing it from many sources and doing to many targets, they can actually still be doing a very good rate of these attacks. This talks about using diverting traffic to with the divert socket in the userland, where you can have a little daemon that will look at composite block lists and your other DNS block lists and decide, oh, this host is known bad, let's not allow them to do that.
Yeah, you're banned. Goodbye. So it looks like it operates alongside like SpamHost and contains many of the known IPs that may be malicious out there. So that's pretty cool that you could use this. But you may want to consider setting this up to reduce the attack spam in your logs. If you're running any kind of public services, like you're going to hit this eventually. It just happens.
Yeah, it'd be really cool to see maybe hooking this up with BGP Spamd, because instead of using the DNS blacklist, which can be a kind of a source of a single point of failure, as we saw, there was, I think it was AHLBL or something like that. One of the other blacklists shut down, and they were still getting a lot of queries, even though they've been shut down for like a year. So they announced that on January 1st, they were going to start returning a positive result for every IP address to get people to stop using them. And obviously,
everything is blocked.
A bunch of IRC networks that use it as a block list were suddenly banning every user.
Nice. Yeah, that got people's attention.
And so
quick,
BGP Spamd is kind of designed to, on the couple of principles: A, update faster, have less query traffic, but at the same time, not be so dependent on DNS working and not being interfered with, and so on. And so it'd be really interesting to see the two of those things combined.
Nice. Okay. So next up, we have some information. We've talked about crypto algorithms in the past. Cha-Cha 20 has come up, but it looks like some folks posted to the FreeBSD hackers mailing list looking at adding Cha-Cha support to the Jelly disk encryption system.
Yes.
So there's some benchmarks he's posted that look pretty good in terms of performance. For those who don't know, currently Jelly defaults to AES in XTS mode with a few different tweakable options, but it also supports some other ciphers in crypto, Blowfish, Camila, Triple DES. So that's cool. But there's some... go ahead.
The original author of the mailing list post was looking at adding Cha-Cha 20 and an extended version of Cha-Cha 20 that uses a longer initialization vector, I think, or longer one of the fields. And so that made it more secure. But later it was brought up that because that's a stream cipher instead of a block cipher, XTS mode was actually not actually doing anything. And so there were some security concerns over what that might do. The one interesting thing, though, is he discovered, or basically caused John Mark Gurney to discover, that when he went in and did the optimizations to AES XTS for the AES NI, which is where the processor has a special instruction to make AES go faster, there were some improvements he made there that he could have but didn't put into the main version if you don't have AES NI. So this developer has basically one of the highest end Core 2 Duos, which is the last processor that didn't have that from Intel. And so he doesn't have the AES NI offload. And so he made some optimizations to AES XTS that sped it up. And John Mark's like, I thought I already made those, but turns out he only made them in the code path if you have AES NI. And so regular AES could get faster as a result of this.
Nice.
Even though it might end up that the cha-cha stuff doesn't go in because of the
just isn't a good match.
Yeah, it turns out it doesn't actually do what we'd want, but it does give like a 30% performance improvement on processors that don't have the offload.
So even if it doesn't end up going in, just looking at code is a good thing, and we may have gotten another benefit as a result of hacking around on this. So that's awesome. Okay, last up this week we got some PCBSD news here, and we have it in the show notes here, but I'll just mention it. So 10.1.1 is our quarterly update, which is scheduled to ship sometime very early February, and we're actually going to go into source freeze this Friday. So part of doing that is we've rewritten a lot of the update system. Most of it's gotten a complete overhaul going from 10.1 to 10.1.1. And it supports automatic upgrades now. So the system can update overnight or whenever it needs to. I'll just explain real quick how this works. But we're using ZFS for everything, boot environments for everything. So updates now don't actually happen on your live system. You can kick an update off while you're running, while you're doing stuff, and it's not going to touch anything in user local. Instead, it creates a new boot environment. It cheroots into that boot environment, does the upgrade in there, does it cleanly, and it bypasses all the package upgrade conflicts and whatnot that we've had trouble with in the last couple years. So it just works. So when it's done, it moves that boot environment, makes it the default, and says, hey, you're ready to reboot now. And whenever you're ready to reboot, you'll boot into your new system that's been updated. So that's all new. It needs some testing. It's been out in our Edge package repo for about 4 weeks, and I'm using it here on all my systems, and I know our other developers are as well. But we also have a new graphical front end for it. So you can tweak values. If you don't want to do automatic updating, you can disable that, or you can say only security updates, for example.
I want to update the base system, but not necessarily my packages.
Not my packages. I'll do that when I feel like it or whatever. So you have all the options for doing that now, and you can set that up in the GUI. And we would appreciate additional testing, especially while we're in code freeze, to make sure we knock out any last bugs or any nits that may be occurring there before we do our quarterly update here soon. So definitely some new stuff. It's exciting. I know it fixed a lot of problems we were having on our systems here, especially some of my kids' computers, where it's like everyone had different packages and some things conflicted, some things didn't. So that all goes away now, and it just works. Let's see. I think that was about it to mention there.
It definitely seems really cool. So you said it basically creates a new boot environment and then chroots into it and installs the updates?
Yeah, chroots into it. So the way we do it is, to be quite frank, we'd had a lot of problems with package NG doing upgrades, right? And we've seen a lot of cases where it's like, yeah, it doesn't really work automated. You need to go delete this package manually because conflict detection didn't work. One of the worst cases I had here was a system where we'd been trying to do automated updates on it, and they had some conflicts, which during the automated update, it was just skipping those things which were conflicting. So you ended up with more out-of-date packages. And, after a couple of weeks, it was just non-usable. You couldn't even do a package upgrade anymore. Just stuff was broken, and it's like, I can't solve any of these things. The SAT solver was failing. So the new system, it will instead check any packages you've installed by hand. So all the top-level packages which don't have dependencies. It builds that list. It then creates a new boot environment and installs those packages fresh into the new boot environment. It doesn't have to download them every time because it keeps caches of the packages, so it only downloads stuff that's changed. And then it basically blows away and reinstalls everything in the new boot environment from scratch. So it takes a bit longer. Instead of a 3-minute update, maybe it's 16 minutes or something. But because it's doing it in the background and it's not tweaking anything that you're currently running, we feel that's an adequate trade-off. Because, again, I can work all day and then reboot at the end of the workday.
Well, I guess my one question about working all day and then rebooting at the end is if I made a configuration change, then that wouldn't be in the new boot environment, right?
So, correct. So, one thing we did make a note of here is if you make configuration changes as root, like /etc or something, you'll want to do that after you've rebooted into the new environment, obviously. Also, you won't want to make package changes at that point as well. So we're going to put some code in actually to disable the app cafe saying, hey, you've updated, you need to reboot before you start tweaking the system and changing packages. But the plus side is now we feel comfortable enough that we've even turned on automated updates. So it just does it in the middle of the night. Like last week, my computers, the kids' computers, I got like 5 kids, right? So all these computers here. And in the morning they come in and they're like, oh, it updated last night, and they just click reboot and it goes. And I haven't had to dig into the command prompt a single time to go figure out what conflicts what's broken. They just reboot and then they're back up doing their thing. So that alone was a huge deal for me. So yeah, this is all new.
The one downside to all of this is now you'll be submitting fewer bug reports against package.
Well, no, we still use a package, and we did find bugs doing this. It's just not in the upgrade system. Yeah. No. Now our bugs are mainly against package fetch and package add. So those are the ways in which we use package ng, and we're just avoiding the whole stat solver issue. Because the other thing we found was too, people don't do their updates in a timely manner. And so what would happen is somebody would have packages from 8 months ago, and the longer they wait, the more conflicts there are to fix, right?
They was like, I want to update Subversion from 1.6 to 1.8, but I don't want to touch everything else.
Yeah. Yes.
And then, it gets all horribly broken, and Firefox won't launch.
It gets horribly broken.
It was my fault. I didn't blame PCBs.
If you look at the ports updating, notes, like there's all kinds of, you need to remove this first so it doesn't break stat solver. And that's all great if you're doing this by hand, but for an automated system where
even people that are ports developers don't read updating until something doesn't work, and then they have to go figure out why.
I'm a ports committer. I work on package. I do stuff like this all day. I don't like doing that because I'm too lazy. I just want to click update and then I'll reboot when I feel like it, right? Like just work, for goodness sake. So anyway, that's what we're doing. That's available now in our Edge repo. So if you're an Edge user, please test it.
Someone in the chat was like, man, next stop rolling release. Well, that's basically what your Edge repo is, right?
That's basically what the Edge repo is. So Edge repo is a rolling release where we do weekly updates that you'll just roll right into it, and the automated system works for that. The only thing with Edge is we do put the brakes on it for about 2-3 weeks when we go into a release cycle for a quarterly update. So, for example, we're going to code freeze this Friday, take a couple weeks before we push any more updates into Edge while we just do bug fixes. But yeah, please test this out and let us know if it works for you. Okay, it's time for questions, folks. First up this week is Matt, and the title, this is Switching from Solaris. So he says, hi, I'm currently using Solaris 11.1 x86, but he's been watching FreeBSD progress for some time. Most of the features I need now are in FreeBSD, just one last thing before I can make the jump. In Solaris, I use Solaris zones, which are similar to FreeBSD jails. Each of these zones can have their own virtual network interface with a VLAN tag, so I can associate the zone through a physical switch to a VLAN interface on my pfSense firewall. It looks like maybe this is possible with vimage and FreeBSD, but I can't find any docs or find out if this is really production ready. The only thing I can find is a discussion about possibly enabling it in the kernel for FreeBSD 11. Any help or tutorial on this would be appreciated, or is there another way of achieving this in FreeBSD that I'm in?
Well, if you just want VLAN tags, you can create the VLAN interfaces on the host system, then put the one IP for the jail on that VLAN, and then just pass that into the jail. Normally, without vimage, the way jails work is they have one or more IP addresses, and when they run ifconfig inside the jail, they only see those IP addresses. They can see the list of all the interfaces, but they can't look at them or change them or anything. And the only IP addresses they see are the one that's assigned to the jail. So you could create the regular VLAN interfaces on the host, and then just, one for each jail or whatever, and pass that in to each individual jail, and then you're done. The other option is vimage, which actually the way that works is that you end up with what's called an E-pair, which is basically an Ethernet point-to-point virtual cable. One pair sits on the host, which you can then use, bridge those to your physical adapter, and then the other pair and the other end of the pair ends up in the jail, where the jail has complete control over its own network configuration, so it can set its own separate default gateway and so on.
Nice.
Yeah, because the downside with the regular way you do it in FreeBSD jails is that they use the host routing table, so they can't be different. Although jails, FreeBSD has FIBs or forward information bases. You can have multiple routing tables, and you can restrict a jail to use a different routing table than the host. So you should be able to do everything you want to do without vimage, although vimage will give you more control. It depends if you need to be able to reconfigure how the networking works inside the jail a lot, or if you just need it them to be in separate VLANs. Because if you just want them to be in separate VLANs, you can do that quite easily with the VLAN interfaces off the host being passed into the jail. But if you, for example, need to be able to run the route command and change your routing table or something inside the jail, then you'll need vimage. vimage is mostly, as far as I know, works perfectly fine,
It's
except for
pretty
there
good,
are some issues trying to run PF inside the jail or just running PF at all.
Yeah, you need to use IPFW is what everyone's
If you
told
need
me.
to use a firewall with it, or use IPFW instead of PF. There's some work being done to fix that and hopefully get it enabled by default in 11 so that you won't have to compile a custom kernel in order to use it. And I've seen quite a few patches on Fabricator and a bunch of them getting submitted. So we're hoping that goes forward. But
Hopefully that happens. Yeah, I'd like to have vimage enabled by default. Would be great.
But you shouldn't need to depend on that to be able to do this. You can probably do it without vimage, or you can use vimage. You just don't use it with PF.
Okay, cool. So next up is from Chris. He's asking about Windows networking on BSD. He says, basic question, how would I administrate my work's Windows network from a BSD workstation? My goal would be to have a workstation that would give me operating system separation, but still allow me to do my job, so that if or when a Windows compromise comes through, my machine would be resistant. So he goes through the basics of his network, which involves a bunch of virtual servers, 55, 14 virtual hosts, 23 other physical servers, 130-ish desktops, which are running Windows 7, some sub-offices, firewalls, storage units, etc. And then, of course, the applications he manages, Exchange, SQL, VMware, Synaptic Endpoint, Backup Exec, and Active Directory, and a whole list of stuff here. So lots of stuff he's working on.
I don't know if there's a tool to actually let you do a lot of Active Directory administration from a non-Windows machine.
Sure.
Obviously, there are clients for like terminal services, so you can get a remote desktop client for FreeBSD and be able to remote into the server and do stuff like you would with SSH or whatever. Obviously, the Cisco and SonicWall firewalls have SSH and web interfaces. I think even VMware has a good web interface, although to actually get the remote console, I think it requires a native plugin, which...
it does, and I know some of the guys still have to use a Windows VM for that.
For some of that stuff. But as far as administering the desktops themselves, I don't know exactly what you are requiring, but...
sure.
It seems like you could do most of it by remote desktoping into, if you need to manage the Exchange server, you can remote desktop into the Exchange server.
Yeah. RDPM.
But there's not really an equivalent to like the I don't know what they actually call it, but like comp management at MSC and ADAP or whatever it is, Active Directory users in computers menu. That whole Windows console snap-in system. There isn't really necessarily something like that.
It's very Windowsy. Go figure. Yeah. Okay, so he continues on. Well, my BSD experience is limited, but I've tested out many different BSDs in VMware Player. Right now, I assume that PCBSD would be my best choice to get me going quickly. Which desktop would you recommend? He said, I threw an earlier version with Lumina on an older desktop at work, and it already seemed pretty complete. Since that was months ago, I can only assume that it's even better, and that's true. We just released an update to it, moving it to Qt5 this last week. It looks a lot nicer and works better. I think it's even lighter weight now. So he says, as far as desktop environment goes, I mean, shoot, use what you want. If you like Lumina, use Lumina. I like KDE personally. I love using KDE. So some people love GNOME. But
I think he'll be most comfortable in KDE because the buttons are in the same places as Windows generally. Yeah. And it's definitely an easier switching experience than something wholly different.
Well, and the nice thing is if you're on PCBSD, you can have them all installed at the same time. So you can just log out, log in. If you don't like one, fine, nuke it and move on to the next. But definitely play around with it. If you want something lightweight, Lumina would probably be the way to go, though. It's the most feature-rich, but not as bare bones as, like, say, Fluxbox or something. So he says, what applications that I don't know would I want to install? And I guess, Alan, we talked a little bit about some of that.
But he specifically says that he's spoiled by Windows 7's graphical integration with the server admin tools. And as far as I know, there is no equivalent to Active Directory's uses in computer's control panel thingy.
That would be something. I'd just say use a virtual box, create a Windows VM, and then you can snap it and roll it back. So if an exploit does come, you just power off that VM and roll it back, or do whatever you need to do. But he said you could. He also asked, "Will my best friend be a good RDP client?" He's not a bad thing. He does a lot of that anyway. Yeah, so you can use a KDR or KRDC, or KDE has a built-in one which will do RDP. It's really nice, easy to get set up with. There's a ton of little things he says I've forgotten to mention that we do that could make a difference, like automatically doing group policies to map users' home documents and home directories to a network share. Yeah, you can do some setup with that. He has his workstation details. It looks like some Dell Optiplex 990 towers, which are
You
i7s.
got 3 SSDs striped together. That must be really fast. But if one of those dies, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It'd be nice for him to have that. He can do a RAID Z1 of it.
Yeah, just do ZFS on that.
Yeah, with RAID Z1, and you'll get 256 gigs of SSD and all the speed and reliability. Yeah, that'll be really nice.
So it's the only thing that would give me a little pause is you're trying to do 4 monitors and you have dual ATIs on there.
Well,
NVIDIA would be the way to
yeah.
go, or we'd prefer
Although
that. You
the
could try
ATIs
it
is
with
supposed to be supported by
ATIs.
the new driver. I've never tried it.
Yeah, that would be something you'd have to try. I'm not as familiar with it personally.
'cause
We
I've
use
just always bought NVIDIA for
It's-
so long because
just works, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't see why you couldn't do this. And if you make the switch and when you get involved, this write down what happens, write down your notes and stuff, and get back in touch
For
with us.
sure,
We'd love to
yes.
hear how it goes. Okay, next up is from Andy asking about ZFS stats. He says, "Hey guys, I'm a long-term listener, first-time caller. Great show." Well, thank you, Andy. Glad to have you with us. He said, "I have a question related to ZFS stats. The output when ZFS stats-e is run on my FreeBSD 10.1 server with 16 gigs of RAM is as follows," and then the long chart of what it showed here. He said, "The question pertains to prefetch metadata and demand metadata. Would you explain what these data types are and how they are affected by the ARC?"
Yes. So these basically what it's showing here is the cache hit ratios for the ARC. So when an application asks for some data, the ARC writes down whether that was already in the ARC or if that had to be got from the disk and so on. And you can see that his cache lists, he has 3.5% or 1.63 million items are in his most recently used files. And then 96% of his ARC is taken up with most frequently used files, which seems a little unusual that most of his files he's using very, very often. But anyway, and then it comes down to his cache hits by data type. So he has demand data and prefetch data and demand metadata and prefetch metadata. So what that means is what ZFS tries to do is when it sees you read a block, it tries to decide, oh, well, I'm going to read that block and the next one, assuming that you're going to want the next one in a minute anyway, right?
Sure.
Or especially if you ask for like a block here, not the middle block, and the next one, it'll read the whole section because that can be faster than actually asking for a seek, because then the disk will do it all at once instead of doing one and then going somewhere else and then coming back, and so on. So it tries to make the disk work as efficiently as possible, kind of like an elevator algorithm, right? An elevator goes up and down. It doesn't go in the order people called for. It gets people on its way because that saves a lot of time. So when a program asks for data, that's demand data, right? Because somebody wanted that. They're demanding it. And then prefetch data is something that the ARC picked up anyway. And then if it got used, that counts as a prefetch metadata hit. So demand metadata is how much metadata that people had asked for that we kept in the cache and ended up using. So 90% of he's got 65% of his cache hits for metadata were stuff that somebody had specifically asked for before. We kept it in the cache, and when they asked for it again. So that was good. But the prefetch meant that we grabbed some other metadata, assuming we might want that too, but it only ended up getting used 0.43% of the time. So those extra reads maybe were a waste. And then they also have the misses where 90% of the times where something wasn't in the cache, it was something they specifically asked for. And 1.98% of the time, it was something that we had prefetched before but didn't keep. And so on. So yeah, the demand means that somebody specifically asked for it and we had it or didn't have it. And prefetch means that it's something we picked up on the way, assuming we might need it, and whether or not that worked. Martin Matuska gave a good talk, I guess it was EuroBSDCon 2012, about interpreting this data because he wrote this tool. And there's another one called ZFS Mon. It comes with it's part of the same package. And when you run it, it gives you these numbers and the change per second. So it shows like the hit ratio in like the last 1 second, 5 seconds, 60 seconds, and since you started the tool or whatever. And it allows you to see how those numbers are working. And if your prefetch is always really low, you might consider turning it off because that will cause less data to actually get read from your hard drive, and that'll make it possibly give you a couple more IOPS to pick up more demand data by seeking around more. So depending on your workload, if you're reading big, like a video file off your FreeNAS, then prefetch is great because as you're reading it, it's already picking up the next bits, and it means that you get great response time and huge bandwidth rates and so on. But if you're doing a database where you're always jumping to a random place and you're never going to, the block beside the block you just read is unrelated and never going to be used, then turning prefetch off might actually give you even more performance. So it really depends on your workload. I almost wonder if it might be useful someday to actually have prefetch as a per dataset option instead of a global option.
Yeah, that would make sense actually if you know this data set's going to have this type
database,
of data.
No prefetch. This is for movies, definitely prefetch, and so on.
That's cool. Well, send that into the OpenZFS guys. That would be cool. Okay, next up from Bo asking about OpenBSD router follow-up. Nice long email here, so let's go ahead and read that. He says, first off, thanks for making my 2-hour commute to and from work better by listening to your podcast. Keep it up. You guys are head above the rest for us BSD lovers. Sure, Linux has podcasts, but they're all morning radio style. Yours are enjoyable, professional, and filled with info I can use. I am a systems engineer at a Fortune 100 company and primarily use Red Hat Enterprise Linux, but my roots were in OpenBSD and FreeBSD and Slackware back in the 90s. Haven't touched them too much since. Well, we got to get you back, but we're glad to have you out there. So he says, I'm looking to do what was done in the episode, but the Socrates, the Socrates box looks to be too expensive for 4-year-old tech. So we're trying to decide on our firewall router hardware. Right now, we currently have a 75 megabits LAN to WAN, 10100 Netgear, FVS 33.8 doing firewall routing and switching. That's overstayed its welcome, so it's time to put that out in the garbage. He says we will be installing OpenBSD and using PF, maybe PF Sense one day, but I'm uneasy running HTTPD on firewall onto a small lower energy silent device as it will be in the main room. He said what he'd like to have is a 1 gigabit internal NIC connected to a Netgear ProSafe, 1 gigabit manned switch or unmanned switch for the LAN. 1 gigabit external NIC connected to the cable modem, 1 gigabit extra NIC connected to a DMZ box. Not required. I can get by with just two just fine, he says.
That's very similar to the setup I have at my house.
He says it should be fanless and silent, and he'd like to have an option for non-spinning disk storage for OpenBSD, so SSD, mini SSD, whatever, that has good performance and longevity. He's currently debating running Snort or SUID, but Snort is a resource hog, so maybe not. He says, now, we will need a gigabit on the LAN side since we will be upstreaming a 1280 by 720 feet of 2 surveillance cameras. We need it to be kept up with decent speed since it'll be backed up to the cloud and video quality is scaled on connection. Fast is good, slow is unusable. We currently have the data line from cable, which claims to be 60 down, 4 up megabits, but speeds will increase over time. So the firewall device would have to be future-proof in that it could handle, increased throughput over time. Now, that said, he said, I've been looking at several general consensus, or he says he's been looking around, and general consensus seems to be to use a Socrates 6501-50, a PC Engines APU1D, or a Shuttle DS437/DS47, or an Edge Router Lite. The PC Engines and Shuttles seem to be out of the running due to the Realtek NICs. The Edge Router Lite has too many bad reviews.
I would definitely go with Intel NICs. They're just
definitely. He says the Socrates seems to be a favor on the forums, although some people say they aren't worth the money and are very out of date, and the new models keep getting pushed. This seems to be the only affordable option with an Intel NIC until I found a D2500 CCC ITX board that has Intel NICs, but not too many people are running them. I need to get this going, and I'm total lost what to buy. Are there any other devices comparable? Comparable to the Socrates 6501 that you used to, that might be newer, better, or less expensive, but with better tech and, of course, Intel NICs. It would need to be gigabit LAN, able to push heavy streaming onto the LAN, probably via an unmanned switch, and allow streaming HD video from the security camera, which you mentioned, over the 1060 connection coming eventually. So he's at a loss of where to proceed. So what do you think
I
here?
was basically in the exact same predicament. I was looking at the Socrates, but I was like, well, I want the rack mountable version, and by the time I add the power supply, it's like $800 and something. And for the same $800 and something, I had IX build me an Intel E3 based server with 4 gigabit NICs in a little short depth case. Now that's not fanless, but if you went with one of the Atom based ones, it would definitely be a lot quieter. And the one I have, you can turn the fans down, like they're set to scale on the temperature, and I turn them to energy saving mode or whatever, and not the loudest thing in my rack. One of my managed switch is actually louder than the one you machine.
Nice. I was gonna say my router I can touch. It's right here. I can't hear it at all. Like there's just a CPU fan in there going, and it's a quiet one.
So my example's not the best because mine's in a rack of hardware in my basement. But yeah, I can see his point about the Socris. For that price, you can get a whole server basically. No, that one was without a hard drive. It had like a 4 gig USB stick as the operating system thing. But and the other thing you mentioned about pfSense and the HDVD, that only listens on the internal LAN, and you can switch it off, I think. So I wouldn't be so worried about using pfSense. It definitely does take most of the hassle out of doing stuff, although you can definitely do it yourself with PF or IPFW or whatever. But using pfSense does make it easier to install some of the other stuff like Squid and so on. I've not heard anything about that D2500 board he was talking about.
No.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you exactly, but yeah, I just went to IX and told them what my requirements are, and they were like, how about this?
On my blog article, I posted the link to the Intel NICs I use, just 2 PCI ones that I threw on this system, and they work great.
I have a bunch of the PCI Express version of that because back before I had fiber, there was a lightning storm, and lightning came in over the cable connection, went through the cable modem without disturbing it, and got into my switch and fried NICs on like 4 of my computers. All the onboard NICs, the lights are still on even though there's no cable plugged in. Because they got zorched.
Yeah, that's not good.
So I had to stick PCI Express NICs in a bunch of my computers.
Yeah, which works fine. I mean, for the speeds he's talking about, a PCI NIC would be...
Exactly. As far as meeting is 100 by 60, anything modern will be able to push at least 500 megabits in each direction without a problem.
Yeah, so that should be pretty future-proof what you're looking at here, especially for the video feed.
The server class Atoms, like the C2750s or whatever, low power is like 17 watts, so it's not going to put out a lot of heat, and you can get 2 or 4 Intel NICs on it, and they work great.
Okay. Well, he also says, I'm planning on documenting the whole process and releasing a tutorial when done. So if you think of anything that should be included in that, I'm all ears. Well, document everything. We'd rather have too much info rather than too little.
And send it to us when you're done.
Yeah, definitely. We will highlight it on a future episode because people like this, custom build your own stuff.
You're not the only person with all of these questions.
So I don't know if I mentioned on the show, but yeah, this weekend we're doing a build fest here at the house, and that's what we're doing is building FreeBSD based routers to replace some of these crazy home ones that nobody trusts anymore. So yeah, this can be a lot of fun, and this gets the geek in me all excited. So okay, so next up, I'm not sure how to pronounce the name, Kute, but he's asking about Poudre. He says, the site is great and mostly helpful to me. Thank you. But this time I have some problems with the tutorial on Poudre. He said, especially about using the RSA key. I tried to get help from Google, but it doesn't help me. I did everything in the tutorial, but every time I run package update, I receive the following error message. Package, no signature was found in the repository. Cannot validate against, and then it lists the path to his key. Package repository, Poudre has no meta file using default settings. He said, now this part, be sure to copy the package.cert file to your client systems via a secure method like SCP or Sneakerette. Now, move these over to the client systems and set up the appropriate package config options to download from the server you set up. He said, I don't understand which clients. Do I have to install a web server like Nginx? Which directories did I have to copy over the package.cert file? Did I miss something? Can you help me, please?
Right.
So I think he's talking about running Poudre and trying to have it do the automatic signing.
Right. So the first one is like... Yeah, it sounds like he has, on the client, he has the SSL, the package.cert set up, but he didn't configure Poudre to sign the packages with it.
Well, for a long time, that didn't work for me. Like we tried that too, but Poudre just wouldn't sign it. It expects everything to be done by hand.
No,
so what we do is just do it by hand. It does sign them? Okay. Maybe it's the version of Poudre we were running. I haven't run it in a while, but we just run package repo dot the directory and sign it manually.
When he was asking about the client systems, I guess I'm not sure what his use case is, but generally you're running Poudre to compile the packages. Then you run a web server like Nginx to expose those, and then you have many client machines that are downloading those packages and installing them. That's how my repo works.
Sure. That's how you serve them.
Now, if you are doing a repo where you're running Poudre and just compiling the stuff for your one machine, then in your package repo, instead of providing an HTTP URL, you provide a file / URL pointing to the Poudre directory where your compiled packages get dumped, and then you can install them on your local system from that. If you're doing it on your local system, you could probably just avoid the signing altogether. But so double check your Poudre config and make sure that you have the key.
It's like SSL key or something like that. There's a variable in there in the Poudre.conf file where you can set that up.
Poudre will need the private key in order to do the signing, and then the client will need the public key in order to verify the signature.
Cool. Okay. Well, awesome. Well, that takes care of our questions this week, but we do have one mailing list gold entry. So do you have that one up here on the screen, Alan? I'll let you read them.
So this is from Pam Nielsen, and she's saying, at the moment, our poor pufferfish is sitting, hopefully swimming, in a pail of water in Calgary. Pufferfish desperately needs someone to take him home and give him the life he deserves. He needs a saltwater aquarium and lots of TLC. So someone has an actual pufferfish that they're trying to find a home for.
Nice.
The person who would qualify to share a home with the pufferfish obviously would be an exceptionally enlightened, intelligent, and superior sentient being, such as a cool programmer, for example. It says there isn't much time, so if you're the one, please answer this email. And if you're in around Calgary, you can pick up pufferfish in Tuscany, which is a neighborhood in Calgary.
Nice. And the pufferfish is free. So pufferfish needs a home.
Has a pufferfish in Calgary, and it needs a home. So maybe we can help that pufferfish find somewhere to live.
Right. Swim all the way home. Nice.
If you happen to be the person that ends up with the pufferfish, if you'd like to send us some video of the pufferfish or something, that'd be really cool.
We need pictures. I don't know. Somebody in the chat saying his cat loves pufferfish.
Yeah, I don't think that's
to
going
look
to
at
work.
them, not. Yeah, and this is no, you cannot eat this. I'm sorry. This is nice.
But yeah, I'm picturing a cat trying to attack a pufferfish and getting killed by the pufferfish.
Yep.
Yeah, they're poisonous for a reason. Anyway.
Okay.
So the next one.
So the next one is from Theo.
Right. So this is somebody had written in and asking about the integrity of the commercial CD sets. So if I buy the CD set from the online store, which has always been, you've been told that's the most secure way to make sure that somebody hasn't tampered with the copy of it. How can you be sure that if I buy the CD key and it has to travel 5,000 miles through multiple nations like Canada and the US and New Zealand and so on that are part of the US intelligence Five Eyes group, you know, whose overzealous three-letter agencies officially intercept physical shipments and install backdoors and so on. How can I be sure that my CD set hasn't been compromised? So I think in that case, most of them that they were like changing the firmware on the Dell hardware. It's, as far as I know, pretty hard to change a CD after it's been pressed, but it may be possible.
Or replace it with the
bad one,
the secret copy. Yeah.
The reply then was they're not regular intercepting CD shipments and replacing the CDs. Although it would not be unusual for an intelligence agency to attempt to intercept particular mail from particular people and so on. But they're saying even if you get the CD from OpenBSD, you can use the Signify utility to check it. And then Theo says, finding them inside the global mail shipping system is easier than you think because CDs labels are printed using radioactive paint they gave us.
Nice.
So, yes,
nice.
Theo's saying they'll definitely be able to find the CDs because we print all OpenBSD CDs with radioactive paint so the government can more easily find them.
Sending radioactive things to the mail is probably...
Yeah, there's rules against that in Canada, for sure.
Bells.
So.
I know when I go to the post office and send something, I have to check the little box. Like, this does not contain this huge list of dangerous things.
There's no, biohazardous material. There's no... this doesn't contain blood or urine or anything.
Nice. Yeah, no biohazardous. Awesome. Okay, well, as we wrap up the show here, guys, we hope you guys had a good week and enjoyed the episode. We looked forward to doing it and look forward, of course, to having you guys with us next week. Try and watch us live Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern if you can. That would be fantastic. And, of course, send us comments to feedback@bsdnow.tv. Or if you find something cool and you want us to highlight it, we do try and monitor stuff, but, there's a lot. It's a big internet out there. There's a lot of stuff happening. So we will miss things from time to time.
We don't know
don't assume we know. We don't know what we don't know until somebody sends it in.
And we don't know what you would find interesting. So make sure you let us know.
Yeah, so send that in. Let us know. And, of course, if you watch or listen to the show a lot every week, you should also check out the written show notes on the website. So we got a lot of good links. Sometimes links we don't mention actually on the air because we just embed them in the document. But you may want to take a look at those and follow up with something we talked about here. So definitely spend some time and do that. So thank you guys for with us. We look forward to seeing you same time next week.